Hey there, I'm Layne Johnson, and I teach classical painting techniques for landscape painters. Welcome to my studio. In today's video, we're talking about painting grasses. I'm going to be blocking in the foreground with brushes that I call texture brushes or grass brushes. Some of these are old, well-used brushes. Others are brushes that I've intentionally altered for this purpose. In another video, I'll show you how to make these type of grass and foliage brushes. You'll find the link to that video somewhere up here or down in the description. And if you like this type of video where I'm demonstrating a specific technique, let me know in the comments. Before we get started, please do subscribe to the channel and look for the links in the description for other resources you might find helpful. Let's get started. Okay, here's a quick demo. The goal is to build up overlapping layers. Usually I'll do the darks first and let that dry, usually in the afternoon. Then I'll come back the next day and start applying highlights. But I'm ambitious. So I'm painting highlights now, wet into wet. If you do this, you'll need to make sure you don't muddy your colors by over applying textures in the same area. That's why it's often better to let the first layer dry and come back the next day. The beauty of painting in layers is that in the end, you will have created a full, rich impression of detail. The more you do this, the better you'll get at it. The technique is sometimes a light stomp. Other times it's a stroke. Sometimes it's a push stroke. You just want to make sure you're reapplying paint. Otherwise you get smudges, and I don't want that. Again, like for most anything, practice is the key. The more you practice and the more you study the floor you're painting, the better the results will be. It's important to remember you're after the impression of detail. And people ask me all the time about texture brushes. How do you get them? And some of them are brushes that I've had for a long time that are just worn. Basically, they've been worn a lot. When a brush starts getting worn, then you can use it as texture brush, and you can even do things to it to abuse it a little bit to make it asymmetrical. Because brushes, by their nature, pretty much are symmetrical. But other brushes I tend to make into texture brushes. These are good examples here. A brush that starts off pretty new, I will cut into it sometimes and then abuse it some. And what you're looking for is the asymmetry of what grass is. If this looks like grass, really. So if you take these brushes, and like I did yesterday, I was doing dark colors. Today, all those dark colors are dry, and I'm adding now some highlights. And again, this still is kind of block in, but a lot of times these block ins turn out really nice, and you have to just do a little bit of detail after that. So this brush here is going to have a lighter color on it. And it works really, really good. This one I haven't tried today. Let me try this one. Okay, now. And each of these brushes has certain qualities about them that are different than the others. Sometimes with these types of brushes, you'll very often have to try one, and it may work for you great or not. And the very same brush may work for you great the next day. It's just sometimes they are very, you have to get in the groove with them. And again, it may not be the final brush at all. I mean, the final part of the painting on this, because I will come back and add detail with liners and things like that for grasses. But they're really, really good to drop in textures. And again, this is not a new brush. This is a brush that's called chip brush, actually. You can get them from a hardware store or from a paint store, and they're not expensive at all. And they come in different sizes. These are 3 different half-inch varieties, but they also come in wider varieties. This is a 2-inch. This one I actually cut out half the brush's side to make it this kind of texture. And here's another one. There's another 2-inch brush. It's again, it's a different scale of texture. That's the big thing when you're working on paintings. You know, it's a big difference if you're working on a painting this size compared to a painting that's small. The texture brush that you're using will be different depending on the scale, and the scale of these brushes are good for certain things depending on what size of painting you're doing. So that's a good example of the kind of brushes that you might use for leaves. It may be great for this size painting, but for a small painting, it'd be too large. And on a smaller painting, you might have to go to a smaller brush. Let's see. Anyway, just a smaller brush like that, or this one. This one's a really good smaller brush for foliage. Can't focus. Well, it's small. So this is the brush I use for a lot of the leaves on this painting so far. And again, I'm not to the final detail, and that's the biggest thing you have to do at the end of the painting is decide what needs to be detailed more, and which maybe some things need to be knocked down in detail, so that you're servicing whatever focal point you're painting in your painting. And a lot of times in my paintings, I'll have more than one focal point, and so I want it to kind of guide it through the painting to give a good experience in the painting. So it makes you feel like you can walk into the painting and go on this journey. You know, one of the times when I get to this is a scene that's like in September, and so there's certain flowers that are in this scene that are not been painted yet. But one of the things when you're painting flora like that is the scale of the flora, and so whatever's in the foreground is going to be larger, and as it recedes, it'll get smaller in size. And depending on if it's in the highlighted area, it'll be brighter. If it's in the shadow area, it'll be dimmer. And that's kind of I really enjoy doing those kinds of things. I like it when the light dapples in and hits part of the landscape and creates a sense of drama. I like to paint that a lot. Okay. Okay. So texture brushes are great. There you go. Here's the final painting with all the grasses, cactus, and flora. For me, texture brushes play a huge role in creating a rich impression of detail that in the end invites the viewer to step into your painting. Be sure to watch my video on how to make your own texture brushes. You'll find the link to that video down in the description. Thanks for joining me in my studio. If you enjoyed this video, you'll also probably enjoy watching the videos I've linked on the screen. Be sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. If you're ready for more in-depth lessons, consider enrolling on one of my online courses where I teach classical painting techniques for landscape painters. You can find all my classes at laynejohnson.com or click on the link in the description below.